They didn't have space heaters, but medieval peasants had something better: clay pots filled with embers that radiated gentle warmth for hours. These portable heat sources warmed beds, work areas, and even traveled outside. Simple? Yes. Effective? Surprisingly so. We'll show how to make your own medieval style radiant heater.
You think those blackened walls in medieval homes were just soot stains from poor housekeeping? Look closer. That discoloration was part of the heating system. Many peasant homes didn't have chimneys at all. Instead, smoke from the central hearth would simply rise and fill the upper half of the room before slowly leaking out through cracks and vents near the roof. At first glance, this seems like a terrible design. Today we know smoke inhalation causes health problems. But medieval builders understood something we often forget. Smoke doesn't just disappear up a chimney without taking heat with it. When smoke lingered in those upper spaces, it created an insulating layer of warm air that prevented heat from escaping through the roof. The ceilings absorbed this warmth during the day and radiated it back at night. The smoke served multiple purposes beyond heating. It cured meats hanging from the rafters. The creosote in wood smoke acted as a natural preservative that protected the wooden roof beams from rot. Smoke also kept insects away. Medieval people noticed that homes with good smoke circulation had fewer problems with lice, bedbugs, and fleas. The same compounds that make wood smoke irritating to breathe also make it toxic to many pests. This wasn't accidental design. Medieval builders carefully calculated roof heights based on how smoke would behave. Lower ceilings worked better in colder climates because the warm layer stayed closer to the living space. Houses in warmer regions often had higher roofs since they needed less heat retention. Some homes even had adjustable smoke vents, covering them in winter to retain heat, opening them in summer for ventilation. The smoke chamber concept goes beyond simple physics. In Norway, archaeologists found that medieval smokehouses could maintain stable temperatures even during harsh winters. The smoke layer created a thermal gradient, warmest at the top where people rarely went, comfortably temperate at head level, and cooler near the floor where drafts occurred. This gradient meant body heat wasn't wasted heating unused space above. You can still see remnants of this technology in old European farmhouses. The distemper paints used on walls contained lime, which reacted with smoke to form a hard, antimicrobial surface. Over generations, the smoke actually preserved the walls while disinfecting the air. Tests show these smoke-treated surfaces resisted mold better than modern drywall. Critics argued smoke caused lung problems, but medieval doctors noted that children raised in smokehouses had fewer respiratory infections than those in drafty stone castles. The smoke's antimicrobial properties may have offset some health risks. Modern studies confirm wood smoke contains compounds that kill airborne bacteria, though chronic exposure is still unhealthy. The blackened appearance served a practical purpose too. Smoke darkened walls absorbed more heat from sunlight coming through small windows. This radiant heat then transferred to the room. Lighter colored walls would have reflected more heat back out. Some homes even applied extra layers of soot to strategic wall sections for better heat absorption. We can learn from this approach today. Modern super-insulated homes struggle with ventilation, while medieval smoke chambers balanced air exchange naturally. Architects are revisiting these principles for passive house designs. The key insight? Sometimes what looks like dirt is actually sophisticated climate control. This wasn't just putting up with smoke, it was engineering an entire thermal system around it. The medieval smoke chamber solved multiple problems with one elegant solution: heating, food preservation, pest control, and building maintenance. Next time you see pictures of sooty old cottages, remember, those stains represent centuries of accumulated thermal wisdom. The system had limits, of course. Too much smoke caused problems, which is why medieval people developed such precise fire-building techniques. They used well-seasoned hardwood that burned cleanly with less smoke. Smaller, hotter fires produced more heat with less smoke than large, smoldering ones. Some homes had separate summer kitchens to avoid overheating. What looks primitive to us was carefully calibrated technology. The thickness of the smoke layer could be adjusted by changing the size of roof vents. Some homes had removable ceiling panels to control heat retention. Smoke chambers worked best in compact single-room dwellings. The larger the space, the harder it was to maintain the thermal gradient. Modern reconstructions proved the effectiveness. Historical villages like the Weald and Downland Museum in England demonstrate how quickly these spaces warm up. A small fire can make a smoke-blackened cottage comfortable in below-freezing weather. The walls absorb and release heat so efficiently that temperatures remain stable for hours after the fire dies down. Critically, this wasn't just about enduring smoke. It was about leveraging its properties intentionally. The same way we now install vapor barriers and insulation, medieval builders created carefully managed smoke environments. The soot patterns on those walls aren't random. They're actually heat maps showing where the system worked best. For all our modern heating technology, we still haven't found a better way to create a warm microclimate without complex machinery. Maybe it's time we stopped seeing smoke-blackened walls as a sign of poverty and started recognizing them as the remnants of an effective thermal strategy, one that kept generations warm through countless winters.
Medieval peasants didn't have high-tech thermal fabrics, but they didn't need them. Wool was their secret weapon against the cold, and they used it in ways modern outdoor enthusiasts still study today. The layered wool system worked so well that people could sleep outside in freezing temperatures without tents. Clothing started with a linen undershirt soaked in lanolin, the natural oil from sheep's wool. This base layer wicked moisture while repelling water like modern technical fabrics. Over this went multiple wool tunics, each progressively thicker. The outermost layer was often a loose wool cloak with a hood. Every fold trapped another thin pocket of warm air close to the body. Researchers have tested these layers in climate chambers. The surprising finding? 5 thin wool jackets keep you warmer than 1 thick coat of the same total weight. The secret is in the air gaps between layers. Medieval peasants understood this instinctively when they made their winter clothing. Wool has properties modern synthetics still can't match. It's naturally flame-resistant, which mattered in homes with open fires. A medieval farmer could stand near a hearth without fear if sparks landed on his wool tunic. Synthetic jackets today melt under similar conditions. Wool also resists compression better than down or polyester, fills when wet, crucial for people working outdoors in snow and rain. The antimicrobial effects made wool practical for long-term wear. Unlike cotton or linen, wool doesn't develop odors as quickly because it repels bacteria. Chemical analysis of medieval textiles shows they contained antimicrobial compounds from lanolin and smoke exposure. Modern tests confirm wool inhibits bacteria that cause skin infections and rashes. Winter cloaks often had strategic openings to regulate heat. A shepherd watching flocks could loosen ties to ventilate during active periods, then tighten them when stationary. Some cloaks had slit openings under the arms for extra airflow control, medieval versions of modern ventilation zippers. Peasants used wool for bedding, too. Multiple wool blankets separated by straw created insulation, similar to a modern sleeping bag system. The straw layers stopped heat transfer while allowing moisture to escape upwards. Archaeological digs reveal medieval sleepers put fresh straw between blankets weekly for better loft. Footwear followed the same principles. Several pairs of wool socks worked better than 1 thick pair. Wealthy peasants wore felted wool overshoes that repelled water while allowing sweat to evaporate. Some boots had wool liners that could be replaced when damp, rather than waiting for the entire boot to dry. The layers weren't static. People adjusted them constantly throughout the day. A farmer hauling firewood might remove 2 layers while working, then pile them back on during midday rest. Children's clothing often had extra tie points, so parents could quickly add or remove smaller wool wraps as need. Fire danger shaped wool choices.
Fleeces with higher lanolin content resisted sparks better. Some winter cloaks had one side left shaggy and unoiled to absorb moisture, while the outer side received extra grease treatment for water resistance. The same cloak could wet one side while keeping the other dry. Wool stretch helped too. Tight woven wool hose shaped to the legs better than linen, trapping more warm air. Some leggings used spiral lacing to maintain compression without cutting off circulation, important for preventing frostbite while allowing movement. Even the wool's color mattered. Darker wool absorbed more sunlight when working outdoors. Many winter cloaks had dark outer layers with light interiors to maximize solar gain during the day, while reflecting body heat at night. Some dyed their outerwear with iron-rich mordants that slightly increased heat retention. The system extended to headwear. A thin linen cap under a thick wool hood prevented heat loss through the head. Some hoods had adjustable neck flaps that could cover most of the face during storms. Peasants knew exposing the head wasted more heat than leaving hands uncovered. Gloves used layered wool too. Thin wool liners under thicker mittens allowed dexterity for tasks like milking animals. The liners could be worn alone for fine work, while the outer mittens attached by threads to avoid loss. Similar systems appear in modern outdoor gear. At night, wool sleeping caps drew heat back into the body. Tests show covering the head during sleep reduces overall heat loss by nearly 30%. Some caps had ear flaps that tied under the chin, like modern ski masks. Wealthier peasants wore layered wool armor for both protection and warmth. A padded gambeson under chainmail created insulated air pockets while absorbing blows. Knights knew metal armor got dangerously cold without proper wool underlayers. The poor adapted the system creatively. Those without enough wool garments would wrap sacks of hay around their bodies under outer clothes. The hay worked like modern synthetic insulation by trapping dead air spaces. Some filled their shoes with dried moss for the same effect. Summer wool was different. Lightweight wool woven loosely allowed ventilation while still protecting from sun. The same principles applied in reverse. Layers could be adjusted to prevent overheating while working in fields. Wool's self-cleaning properties mattered most in winter. Without laundry facilities, people relied on wool's natural resistance to dirt buildup. Smoke from hearths helped too. Wool exposed to wood smoke developed antimicrobial properties that lasted months. Modern outdoor clothing companies have studied these medieval techniques extensively. The best mountaineering gear now mimics the layered wool approach, rather than relying on single thick garments. Military cold weather gear has returned to wool blends for many base layers. Tests at outdoor schools prove wool layers outperform modern synthetics in some conditions. Wool maintains insulation when wet better than any synthetic. It also resists wind better than most breathable fabrics. The medieval wool system wasn't perfect. It required careful maintenance and lots of material, but it worked with the materials available and adapted to countless situations. That flexibility made it superior to single-purpose modern clothing in many ways. Aquota nada memers dedent missing sing maids many synthetics takesing. What looks like simple peasant clothing was actually a sophisticated personal heating system. Every fold, layer, and stitch had purpose beyond fashion. The next time you layer up for cold weather, remember, medieval peasants perfected the technique centuries ago. Their wool layers didn't just cover the body, they turned it into an efficient heat engine, capable of surviving brutal winters. Modern insulation products seem advanced compared to bundles of straw, but medieval builders understood something we often overlook. Hay and straw weren't just cheap stuffing, they were carefully chosen insulation materials that worked surprisingly well. Peasants packed walls with these agricultural leftovers not because they lacked options, but because straw performed better than many alternatives available at the time. Straw and hay served different purposes in medieval homes. Farmers reserved hay for animal feed because it was more nutritious. Straw, the tough stalks left after harvesting grains, became the preferred insulation material. It resisted rotting better than hay and didn't ferment when damp. This distinction shows medieval people weren't just throwing random plant material in their walls. They selected specific materials for specific properties that we still recognize as important in modern insulation. The basic principle was simple. Straw trapped small pockets of air between its stiff stalks. These air pockets slowed down heat transfer through walls, keeping warmth inside during winter and heat outside during summer. This same concept appears in modern fiberglass insulation and foam boards. Medieval builders achieved similar results using materials they had readily available. Wattle and daub walls used straw as both a structural element and insulation. Workers mixed straw into the clay daub to prevent cracking as it dried. The finished walls had tiny air spaces throughout the material that resisted heat transfer. Additional loose straw stuffed between double layers of wattle created extra insulation pockets. Some homes hung wool or linen curtains over interior walls, leaving a gap filled with straw for maximum heat retention. Research shows straw insulates better than solid wood at the same thickness. Tests on medieval house reconstructions demonstrate straw-packed walls maintain more stable temperatures than plain timber walls. An 18-inch straw-filled wall provides similar insulation value to a modern 2x4 wall with fiberglass batts. The key was proper installation. Straw had to be packed densely enough to prevent air currents while maintaining tiny air pockets. Medieval builders developed techniques to keep straw dry and effective. Roof overhangs extended further on houses with straw insulation to protect walls from rain. Walls often had a layer of lime plaster that allowed moisture to evaporate outward while keeping rain from soaking in. Some homes used an outer layer of thin wooden slats with small gaps that vented moisture without letting in much wind. The thickness of straw layers varied by climate. Homes in colder regions used walls packed up to 2 feet thick with straw. Regions with milder winters might only use 4 to 6 inches. Builders adjusted the density, too. Tightly packed straw blocked wind better, while looser packing provided slightly better insulation value. Straw didn't just insulate walls. Peasants used it under floors as well. A thick layer of straw beneath floorboards created a thermal break against cold ground. Some homes had removable floor panels so straw could be replaced if it became damp or compressed. Wealthier peasants might use a layer of straw covered by rushes for even better insulation underfoot. Roofs benefited from straw too. Thatch provided excellent insulation from above when properly maintained. Beneath the thatch, peasants often packed loose straw between roof beams. This combination could keep upper rooms much warmer than uninsulated attics in modern homes. The straw helped regulate temperature year-round, keeping houses cool in summer as well as warm in winter. Straw insulation required maintenance, but required less than you might think. Contrary to modern assumptions, properly installed straw in walls doesn't rot quickly. Experiments show straw can last over a century when kept dry. Medieval peasants replaced wall straw every few decades during major renovations, but otherwise left it undisturbed. The system worked because straw resists moisture better than other plant materials. The hollow stalks allow water to drain through rather than soaking in. Waxy coatings on straw stems prevent rapid moisture absorption. Tests on medieval-style walls show interior straw often remained dry even after years of exposure to humid air. Insects weren't as big a problem as modern people assume either. Cob construction with high lime content naturally repelled many pests. Smoke from hearths penetrated walls and deterred insects. Some peasants added herbs like lavender or mint to their wall straw for extra pest protection. The combination created an environment where infestations were rare. Comparing straw to modern materials shows surprising advantages. Straw is more breathable than plastic foam insulation, allowing moisture to escape rather than condensing inside walls.
It's more fire-resistant than many think. Dense straw bales actually char on the outside while protecting the interior, similar to heavy timber construction. Thermal imaging studies reveal how effectively straw insulated medieval homes. On cold nights, the interior surface of straw-filled walls remained much warmer than uninsulated walls of the same thickness. The temperature difference between inner and outer wall surfaces proves straw significantly reduced heat loss. Modern researchers have measured straw's insulating property scientifically. The R value ranges between 1.5 and 3 per inch, depending on density and orientation. That's comparable to some mineral wool insulation products. More importantly, straw performs better than its R value suggests in real-world conditions because it blocks air infiltration so effectively. Medieval peasants understood straw's advantages beyond insulation. It was lightweight enough that homes didn't need massive foundations. It was renewable every harvest season. Damaged sections could be easily replaced without specialized tools. The entire system used locally available materials with minimal processing required. Some regions developed specialized straw insulation techniques. In Scandinavia, builders mixed straw with animal hair and clay for extra strength and moisture resistance. Alpine areas used layered straw mats between wall planks for better wind protection. Coastal regions often added salt to their wall straw to inhibit mold growth. We can still see straw's effectiveness in preserved medieval buildings. Structures with original straw insulation maintain remarkably stable temperatures without modern heating systems. The straw continues functioning even after centuries because the material itself is protected within the wall system. Modern builders are rediscovering these benefits. Straw bale construction is making a comeback among sustainable builders. The technique works on the same principles medieval peasants used, just with bales stacked neatly instead of loose straw stuffing. Tests show straw bale houses often outperform conventional construction for energy efficiency. The lesson isn't that straw is better than modern insulation, but that medieval builders achieved excellent results with careful material selection and installation. Their hay wall insulation wasn't a primitive stopgap. It was an effective system developed through generations of trial and error. When we look at those seemingly crude straw-filled walls, we're seeing the medieval equivalent of high-performance building science.
Medieval families didn't sleep alone in separate beds like we do today. Entire households shared one large sleeping area, often just a single bed or pile of straw. At first glance, this seems uncomfortable and overly crowded, but this sleeping arrangement was carefully designed to conserve body heat during bitter winters when temperatures inside homes could drop below freezing. The typical peasant family slept in a tight circle, positioned deliberately to maximize warmth. Parents and older children formed an outer ring with their bodies. Younger children and elderly relatives slept in the center, where they received heat from all sides. This protected the most vulnerable family members who couldn't generate as much body heat. Babies often slept between parents for extra warmth and safety. Thermal imaging studies on reconstructed medieval sleeping arrangements show how effective this was. The center of a sleep group stays several degrees warmer than the surrounding air. Even when room temperatures fell to 40 degrees Fahrenheit, the center of a family sleeping circle could maintain temperatures near 60 degrees. This difference was often enough to prevent hypothermia during long winter nights. Families enhanced the effect with shared bedding. Multiple wool blankets covered the entire group rather than individuals having separate covers. This trapped heat more efficiently by creating one large warm air pocket instead of many small ones. The weight of several blankets also helped prevent drafts from entering the sleep space. Sleeping platforms were designed to retain heat. Many peasant homes had raised wooden beds filled with straw or wool scraps for insulation from cold floors. Some built sleeping alcoves into thick stone walls that absorbed daytime heat. Others suspended beds over livestock areas to benefit from animal warmth rising through slatted floors. Families adapted their sleeping arrangements seasonally. In summer, they might spread out more, but as temperatures dropped, they slept closer together. Winter sleeping positions became almost choreographed, with each person's placement serving a purpose. The strongest heat producers slept on the windward side to block drafts. Smaller gaps between bodies reduced air circulation that could carry away warmth. Additional heat sources often supplemented body warmth. Families might place heated stones wrapped in cloth at the foot of the bed. Some kept small charcoal braziers nearby overnight in well-ventilated rooms. Others hung thick wool curtains around the bed to create a smaller heated space within the larger room. Visitors often joined the sleep group in cold weather. Travelers, servants, and even livestock might share the sleeping area when temperatures plunged. More bodies meant more shared warmth. Household accounts mention families welcoming neighbors during severe cold snaps, specifically for the warmth additional sleepers provided.
The entire sleeping process followed careful routines. Families went to bed shortly after sunset to maximize warmth during the coldest hours. They changed sleeping positions periodically through the night to maintain even heat distribution. Moving prevented any one person from becoming too cold from lying near the edge for too long. Sleeping clothes were designed for this system. People wore multiple wool layers to bed, including socks and mittens. Most kept their daytime underlayers on at night rather than changing, preserving the warmth their clothes had absorbed during the day. Some families shared oversized sleeping garments that covered multiple people simultaneously. Bedding materials were chosen for their insulating properties. Straw made a common mattress because it trapped air between stalks. Wool blankets outnumbered linen because wool better retained heat when slightly damp from body moisture. Some peasants stuffed sacks with down or feathers when available, creating primitive sleeping bags for the whole family. Homes were arranged around sleeping areas. Families often placed beds near but not too close to the hearth. This allowed residual heat from evening fires to warm sleepers without risking nighttime sparks. Some built sleeping alcoves in corners that stayed warmer due to two walls retaining heat. Sleeping groups had established rules to maintain comfort and safety. Most avoided excessive movement that could let cold air under covers. Coughing or sneezing away from other sleepers prevented chilling them with sudden cold blasts. Some records mention sleepers taking turns staying slightly awake to tend heat sources or adjust covers for others. The practice had health benefits beyond warmth. Social bonds strengthened through nightly closeness. Parents could monitor children's health through physical contact during sleep. Elderly family members received care through simple nighttime adjustments to their position in the sleep circle. Modern survival schools teach similar techniques. Outdoor instructors advocate hot bunking, where campers share sleeping bags in extreme cold. Military training includes group sleeping methods for Arctic conditions. These modern practices directly mirror medieval approaches, rediscovered out of necessity. Reenactment groups have tested historical sleeping arrangements. Participants report staying remarkably warm despite freezing outdoor temperatures. The key is maintaining constant body contact and minimizing air movement within the sleeping group. Even without modern sleeping bags, properly arranged wool blankets and shared body heat prove sufficient. Archaeology supports the effectiveness of this system. Examination of medieval bones shows fewer signs of cold stress damage than expected given period climate data. This suggests most peasants avoided chronic exposure to nighttime cold, severe enough to damage bones and joints. Building layouts reveal sleeping efficiency. Many peasant homes had unusually small sleeping areas relative to family size. This seemingly cramped arrangement actually helped conserve heat by reducing the air volume needing warming. Low ceilings in sleeping alcoves served the same purpose. Farm animals sometimes joined the system. Smaller livestock, like chickens or lambs, might be brought inside during extreme cold. Their body heat contributed noticeably to warming the room. Some homes had ground-level sleeping platforms with animal pens beneath, exploiting rising warmth through floor cracks. The practice continued into modern times among rural populations. Farmers in remote areas used group sleeping well into the 20th century during winter. Historical accounts describe entire families sleeping together in barns or root cellars during blizzards for shared warmth. Sleeping arrangements changed with age and status. Young couples might start married life sleeping between their parents' families for added warmth. Servants typically slept near their employer's family circle. Only the wealthiest could afford separate sleeping chambers with individual heating provisions. Modern heating makes group sleeping unnecessary today, but the principles remain sound. Outdoor enthusiasts still use buddy systems in survival situations. Hospitals employ similar concepts with warming techniques for premature infants. The medieval approach worked because it directly addressed fundamental thermodynamics of heat retention. Research confirms body heat sharing is effective. Studies show skin-to-skin contact between adults raises surface temperatures by 2 to 3 degrees Fahrenheit. Experimental groups in cold chambers maintain core temperatures longer when huddled rather than spaced apart. These findings validate centuries of practical experience. The system wasn't perfect. Overcrowding risked spreading illness.
Some sleepers inevitably got stuck in drafty edge positions, but considering the alternatives, group sleeping represented an intelligent adaptation to environmental challenges. What appears as primitive, crowding, was actually an efficient survival strategy. Modern energy shortages sometimes prompt returns to these methods. During power outages or fuel crises, families instinctively rediscover shared sleeping for warmth. This demonstrates how practical the medieval approach remains in emergency situations when modern heating fails. Survival experts consider group sleeping one of the most effective primitive warming techniques. It requires no special equipment, just intelligent use of available bodies and materials. The medieval version was refined through generations of trial and error to achieve maximum efficiency. What looks like a simple sleeping arrangement was actually a sophisticated thermal management system. Every aspect from body positions to bedding choices contributed to survival in unheated homes. The next time you adjust your thermostat, consider how medieval families stayed warm through careful coordination and shared body heat. Their solution lacked modern technology, but succeeded through clever application of basic principles. A simple clay pot filled with hot coals might not seem powerful compared to modern heaters, but medieval peasants relied on these for reliable warmth. They created an early version of portable heating that worked surprisingly well. These clay vessels absorbed heat from embers or hot stones and radiated it steadily over several hours. Unlike open fires that burned out quickly, the pots provided consistent warmth without constant feeding. The pots worked on basic thermal principles. Clay heats slowly, but holds temperature well. Once warmed through, even a small pot could emit heat for most of the night. Tests show an 8-inch clay pot with burning coals inside maintained surface temperatures around 140 degrees Fahrenheit, 60 degrees Celsius for up to 6 hours. That's warm enough to noticeably heat small spaces while remaining safe to touch briefly. The curved shape helped distribute heat evenly in all directions. Peasants used different sizes for various purposes. Small, hand-sized pots warmed beds or mittens. Medium pots, about the size of a modern teapot, heated under tables where people worked. Large vessels, similar to cooking pots, warmed whole rooms when placed centrally. Each size served specific needs within peasant households that lacked modern zoning for different activities. Safety features prevented accidents. Most pots had small ventilation holes to keep embers smoldering without risk of flaring up. Handle allowed safe carrying even when hot. Some designs included lids with narrow slits that controlled airflow to prolong burning. These refinements show generations of practical experience behind what might seem like simple objects. The heating technique adapted easily to different situations. Workers carried pots to barns or workshops in cold weather. Families placed them under blankets for foot warmers during winter gatherings. Some accounts mention pots wrapped in rags and placed directly against cold feet in bed. Unlike modern heaters requiring power outlets, these worked anywhere with access to a fire source. Treatises from the period describe optimal fuel types. Hardwood coals lasted longest, sometimes up to 8 hours. Some peasants mixed in dried dung for slow-burning fuel when wood was scarce. Certain herbs added to the coals provided pleasant smells along with warmth. Records show rosemary and lavender were popular choices that also helped mask less pleasant household odors. Thermal imaging reveals how effectively these pots warmed spaces. A single medium pot in a 10 by 10 foot room raised air temperatures by 5 to 7 degrees within 2 hours. While that seems modest, it made the difference between comfort and suffering in drafty medieval homes. Combined with body heat and other methods we've discussed, clay pots provided crucial supplemental warmth. Archaeological finds show regional variations in design. Coastal areas used thicker clay that resisted cracking from thermal stress. Mountain villages made taller pots that held larger coals for longer burn times. Some regions added sand or gravel fill around the inner chamber to improve heat retention. These local adaptations demonstrate how communities refined the technology to suit their environments. Maintenance was simple but important. Pots needed occasional resealing with clay slurry to repair hairline cracks. Rotating between multiple pots prevented any single vessel from overheating.
Careful cleaning removed ash buildup that could reduce efficiency. Some households assigned specific family members to pot maintenance as part of regular chores. The pots complemented other heating methods. Placed near heat-storing furniture, they helped maintain warmth overnight. Used with wool blankets, they created cozy sleeping areas without wasting fuel. Combined with smoke chambers, they reduced the need for constant open fires. This integration shows medieval heating worked as a system, not just random techniques. Modern experiments confirm their effectiveness. Historical reenactors using replicas report sleeping comfortably in below-freezing conditions with just a single pot under their blankets. Outdoor workers find clay pots warmer than modern hand warmers when properly prepared. The slow heat release prevents the rapid cooling that plagues many portable heaters today. Safety compared favorably to alternatives. Unlike braziers that risked carbon monoxide poisoning, clay pots burned small amounts of fuel safely. Their enclosed design minimized spark risks that plagued open hearths. The outer surface rarely got hot enough to ignite fabrics during normal use. Accident records from medieval towns show far fewer heating-related fires than expected given widespread use. Children's versions existed as well. Smaller pots with extra thick walls allowed safer handling by young users. Some had attached chains or ropes to prevent dropping. Accounts mention children carrying these to school or while tending animals. This demonstrates how completely the technology integrated into daily life across all ages. The pots traveled surprisingly well. Wrapped in wool or straw, they stayed warm for hours during winter journeys. Some medieval travelers reported keeping feet warm in unheated carriages using these devices. Pilgrims and merchants carried them during cold weather trips where stopping to build fires wasn't practical. Clothing adaptations accommodated the pots. Some cloaks had interior pockets sized specifically for small heaters. Special wool covers prevented burns while allowing heat transfer. Certain styles of medieval coats and robes appear unusually roomy in the chest area, possibly to accommodate hidden heating pots during winter wear.
Records show creative survival uses during extreme cold.
Some families slept clustered around multiple pots placed at key positions. Ill or elderly individuals sometimes received priority access to the warmest spots. During severe winters, entire villages might pool their heating pots in central gathering places to create survivable microclimates. Ceramic technology improved over time. Later medieval pots showed refined clay mixes that resisted thermal shock better. Glazed interiors prevented ash from sticking and made cleaning easier. Some high-status versions featured decorative exteriors while maintaining the same functional design underneath. The best examples demonstrate craftsmanship on par with fine pottery while serving practical needs. Comparative studies reveal the advantages. Modern tests show clay pots outperformed metal alternatives of the period. While metal heated faster, it also cooled quicker. Ceramic's slower response time proved more useful for sustained heating needs. This highlights medieval people's understanding of material properties beyond surface appearances. The system's simplicity made it resilient. Unlike complex heating systems that failed without specialists, anyone could maintain clay pots. If one broke, replacements could be made locally. Fuel came from routine household activities rather than specialized supply chains. This self-sufficiency proved crucial during famines or conflicts when resources grew scarce. Modern off-grid enthusiasts have revived the technique. Some homesteaders use modified versions as emergency heat sources. Campers find them useful for tent heating without fire hazards. The basic design persists in various cultures worldwide, adapted for local materials and needs. Its longevity testifies to fundamental effectiveness. Economic factors encourage widespread use. Clay was cheap and available nearly everywhere. Even the poorest households could afford at least one small pot. Fuel came from cooking fires that burned anyway. This low-cost solution provided heating without straining limited medieval household budgets. The pots solved multiple problems simultaneously. Beyond heating, they dried damp clothing when placed beneath hanging garments. Some cooks used cooled pots to keep prepared food warm for hours. Herbalists employed them to maintain consistent temperatures for medicinal preparations. This versatility increased their value beyond basic warmth. Documentary evidence shows surprising sophistication. Household inventories sometimes list different pots for different heating purposes. Some records specify ideal coal amounts for various pot sizes. This systematic approach reveals thoughtful development beyond crude improvisation.
Psychology may have played a role in their effectiveness. The visible glow through ventilation holes provided psychological comfort beyond measurable warmth. The faint, herbal scents likely improved perceived air quality in close quarters. These subtle factors may have enhanced the practical heating benefits. Modern energy crises prompt renewed interest. During power outages, some households successfully employ traditional clay pot heating as a stopgap. Researchers studying low-impact living have documented these case studies as examples of resilient technology. The medieval solution still works when modern systems fail. Technical limitations existed, but were understood. People knew pots couldn't replace central heating in severe cold. They served as supplements to other methods we've discussed, filling specific roles where direct fire wasn't practical. This pragmatic approach to heating matched medieval people's overall survival strategy. The ultimate testament lies in archaeological distribution. Excavations find clay heating pots across all levels of medieval society, from peasant huts to castle chambers. Their universal adoption across diverse climates and cultures proves their effectiveness. What began as simple necessity evolved into refined technology through centuries of daily use. These humble objects represent one of history's most successful examples of appropriate technology. Simple solutions perfectly matched to needs and resources.
Dugout shelters solved one of medieval peasants' biggest problems, staying warm without expensive materials or constant fire tending. A house built partially underground used the earth itself as insulation. While these structures might appear primitive, they worked on the same principles as modern geothermal heating systems. The ground below frost line maintains a steady temperature year-round. Medieval builders exploited this fact by positioning living spaces where nature did half the heating work. Eastern European peasants perfected this technique over generations. Their semi-submerged homes typically had 3 walls protected by earth, with only the front exposed. The entrance often faced south to catch sunlight during shorter winter days. Roofs sloped gently and were covered with turf or straw that blended into surrounding landscapes. This design wasn't accidental. It reduced heat loss while making homes nearly invisible from a distance. The temperature difference between above-ground and dugout homes was significant. Where a surface dwelling might drop to freezing overnight, a shelter with 3 feet of earth cover rarely fell below 45 degrees Fahrenheit. This proved crucial during winter when nighttime temperatures could plummet. Peasants needed only modest heating to reach comfortable levels rather than fighting extreme cold from the start each morning.
Construction methods maximized efficiency. Builders packed earth tightly against walls or used stone linings to prevent soil collapse. A layer of clay between earth and living space blocked moisture while conducting heat. Some added straw insulation behind wall panels for extra protection against drafts. The floor, being deepest underground, stayed warmest, perfect for sleeping areas or animal pens that benefited from consistent heat. Smoke management worked differently in dugout homes. Without chimneys in early versions, smoke rose to the ceiling and slowly filtered through turf roofs. This process preserved heat that would escape through modern chimney flues. The smoke also helped waterproof the roof structure over time while deterring insects. Later designs incorporated small smoke holes that could be partially blocked in winter to retain warmth. Window placement showed careful planning. Most dugouts had only 1 or 2 small openings positioned high on exposed walls. These let in light while minimizing cold air intrusion. Sheepskin or oiled parchment covers provided transparency when needed but could be layered during extreme cold. The limited openings created a greenhouse effect on sunny days, trapping solar warmth from these carefully placed portals. Archaeological evidence shows regional variations in these designs. Scandinavian dugouts frequently used log walls between earth and living space. Russian zemlyankas often featured elaborate clay ovens that radiated heat for hours. Irish souterrains sometimes connected to animal shelters, sharing body heat between species. Each adaptation addressed local climate challenges while maintaining core thermal principles. Ventilation was controlled smartly. Unlike modern homes that constantly exchange air, dugouts minimized airflow to conserve warmth. Small vents near the floor drew in fresh air slowly. This air warmed as it crossed heated surfaces before reaching occupants. Stale air exited through roof materials gradually rather than creating drafts. The system balanced air quality with heat retention effectively. The single-room layout improved heat distribution. Without hallways or separate chambers to warm, all household activities benefited from shared warmth. Central hearths or ovens heated the entire space efficiently. Low ceilings, often under 6 feet, reduced the volume of air needing heating. Furnishings were arranged to avoid blocking heat circulation from central sources. Moisture control was surprisingly effective. The common assumption that dugouts were damp comes from poorly maintained examples. Proper construction included gravel foundations for drainage and lime washes to inhibit mold. Constant low-level heat from earth and hearth kept humidity in check. Historical accounts mention straw floors being replaced regularly to absorb incidental moisture.
These shelters required less fuel than above-ground homes. A medium-sized dugout needed about half the firewood of a surface dwelling in comparable climates. This was crucial where firewood collection demanded significant labor. The fuel efficiency allowed peasants to dedicate more time to other winter survival tasks rather than constant wood gathering. Security benefits complemented thermal ones. The low profile made dugouts harder targets during conflicts. Concealed locations in hillsides or forests provided natural camouflage. Some included hidden secondary exits or storage cavities for protecting valuables. These features became more important during periods of instability when visible homes invited trouble. Building techniques evolved to address limitations. Later medieval dugouts incorporated drains to prevent water accumulation. Some used wooden floors raised slightly above ground level for better insulation. Wealthier versions might have plank-lined walls covered in decorative textiles that added another air-insulating layer without sacrificing warmth. Maintenance followed seasonal patterns. Spring involved checking roof integrity after snow melt. Summer was for replastering interior walls and refreshing earthen berms. Autumn preparations included adding extra insulation layers before winter arrived. This cyclical care extended structure lifespans beyond what crude appearances might suggest. Modern thermal imaging shows why they worked. The earth barrier maintains near constant wall temperatures despite external fluctuations. Heat maps reveal how warmth from small fires spread evenly through compact spaces. Even without fires, the ground's geothermal energy keeps temperatures stable throughout seasonal changes. Comparisons with modern housing are revealing. Today's above-ground homes lose heat rapidly during power outages. Dugouts maintain habitable temperatures much longer without active heating. Some experimental builds demonstrate that properly constructed earth shelters can stay above freezing for weeks without any supplemental heat in temperate climates. Building materials were intentionally simple. Clay, stone, wood, and straw, all locally available, formed most structures. This made dugouts accessible to the poorest peasants who couldn't afford specialized materials. Construction knowledge passed orally through generations, ensuring communities could replicate designs without blueprints or engineers. Orientation maximized solar gain. Entrances consistently face south across European examples to capture low winter sunlight. Some incorporated reflective ponds or light-colored stones outside to bounce additional light inside. The precise angling shows careful observation of seasonal sun patterns over centuries of refinement. Archaeological evidence from Viking-era Denmark demonstrates effectiveness. Excavated dugouts show signs of continuous winter occupation through bone analysis and hearth residue. Compared to contemporary above-ground structures, these sites reveal fewer skeletal stress markers from cold exposure among inhabitants. Contemporary accounts praise their comfort. A 14th century priest journal describes spending winter in a peasant dugout as surprisingly commodious against the season's bite. Other records note travelers preferentially seeking dugout inns during cold months for their reliable warmth despite rougher appearances. Modern recreations confirm their viability. Historical societies building accurate dugout replicas report comfortable winter living with minimal heating. Participants consistently note how quickly small heat sources raise interior temperatures compared to conventional buildings. The structures also stay remarkably cool during summer heat waves. Psychological factors shouldn't be overlooked. The enveloping earth provided a sense of security during harsh weather. Low light levels encouraged longer winter sleep that conserves energy. The close quarters fostered family bonding that helped combat seasonal depression, benefits beyond mere temperature regulation. Transition periods show adaptability. Some dugouts began as temporary shelters that became permanent over generations. Others evolved into above-ground homes when materials allowed while retaining earth-bermed foundations for insulation. This flexibility demonstrates how peasants adjusted solutions to changing circumstances. Climate-specific modifications appeared across regions. Coastal dugouts used shell layers in walls for better moisture control. Mountain versions incorporated larger stones for thermal mass. Steppe dwellings extended underground storage areas that doubled as cold sinks for food preservation. Each variation addressed local conditions while maintaining core principles. The technology wasn't static either.
Late medieval dugouts show improvements like channeled floor heating and better smoke control. Some incorporated iron fittings for hanging cooking pots directly over sleeping areas, combining food preparation with space heating efficiently. These innovations came from persistent refinement rather than sudden invention. Survival value became clearest during extreme events. Chronicles from the Little Ice Age note how dugout villages withstood conditions that devastated conventional settlements. Famine records show these communities often fared better, thanks to more stable food storage conditions underground. Long-term durability surprised even builders. Some excavated dugouts reveal multiple layers of occupation spanning centuries. The structures apparently remained serviceable with periodic maintenance, long after comparable surface buildings would have decayed. This longevity made them practical investments despite initial digging labor. Modern architects have rediscovered these principles. Earth-sheltered homes now incorporate many medieval features like thermal mass walls and strategic window placement. Passive house standards often emulate the airtightness and insulation balance that medieval peasants achieved through trial and error. The old methods still inform cutting-edge, sustainable design. The ultimate testament comes from continued use. Traditional dugouts still shelter shepherds in parts of Eastern Europe during winter. Modern off-grid builders adapt these concepts for low-impact living. Their persistence across centuries and cultures proves dugouts weren't primitive shelters, but sophisticated climate control systems using the earth itself as a heating partner. What appears as simple digging was actually medieval mastery of geothermal principles through practical experience rather than scientific theory.
The medieval winter cloak wasn't just an article of clothing. It was a carefully engineered heating system worn on your back. Peasants relied on these wool garments to create personal microclimates that could withstand freezing temperatures without modern technical fabrics. The secret wasn't in fancy materials, but in how they manipulated basic physics using simple designs. A standard cloak used about 3 yards of thick wool fabric in a semicircular cut. The shape wasn't accidental. It allowed the garment to wrap completely around the body with no gaps. When secured at the neck with a simple clasp or tie, it formed a continuous barrier against wind and cold. The loose fit created an insulating airspace that worked like a thermos for body heat. Wool's natural properties made it ideal for this purpose. The fibers contain tiny air pockets that slow heat transfer better than solid fabrics. Medieval cloaks used densely woven wool that could trap up to 80% air by volume. This gave better insulation than modern synthetic puffers of the same thickness. The wool also retained warmth when damp from snow or sweat, unlike cotton, which loses all insulating value when wet. Construction methods enhanced performance. Many cloaks had double layers at the shoulders, where wind hit hardest. Seams were reinforced with extra stitching, but left slightly open to maintain breathability. Some versions used graduated thickness, thinner wool near the neck where movement needed flexibility, thicker panels below for maximum insulation. Each design choice addressed specific thermal challenges. Wind protection was crucial in open fields and drafty homes. A properly worn cloak could reduce wind chill by up to 20 degrees Fahrenheit. The heavy wool resisted airflow better than modern windbreakers that rely on chemical coatings. Peasants knew to face the wind with their cloak wrapped tight like a shield, using the layered wool as a barrier against icy gusts. Some cloaks incorporated additional weatherproofing. Rural versions were often coated with lanolin, the natural oil from sheep's wool. This made them shed water like a wax jacket, while allowing sweat vapor to escape. In very wet regions, peasants rubbed animal fats into the fabric for extra waterproofing that lasted all winter. The treatments smelled strong, but prevented lethal chill from soaked clothing. Cold climate areas added fur linings from local animals. Fox, rabbit, or squirrel pelts lined the interior where they trapped warmth closest to the body. Wealthier peasants might use wolf or bear fur for the thickest insulation. These linings were often removable for warmer seasons or cleaning. Some cloaks had fur-edged hoods that could be drawn tight like a tunnel to protect the face.
Cloak lengths were adjusted for different activities. Shepherds wore knee-length versions for mobility during long walks. Elderly people favored ankle-length designs that retained more heat when sitting. Children's cloaks often included extra fabric allowances so they could grow into them over multiple winters. Each variation balanced warmth with practical needs. The garments adapted to various weather conditions.
In light snow, peasants wore cloaks wool side out to shed precipitation. During rain, they reversed them to expose any treated surfaces. Some had differently finished sides, one smooth for dry weather, one brushed for maximum insulation when temperatures plunged. This flexibility outperformed single-purpose modern jackets. Fastening systems were equally thoughtful. Simple loops and toggles allowed adjustments without removing gloves. Wealthier versions had interlocking metal clasps that could be operated with numb fingers. The most ingenious used knotted cord systems that tightened the whole garment with one pull, medieval predecessors to modern drawstrings. Night brought specialized use. Many peasants slept in their cloaks during extreme cold, using them as supplemental blankets. Some cloaks had extra-wide cuts that could wrap completely around two people huddled together. Travelers used them as ground cloths and sleeping bags when shelters weren't available. The versatility extended beyond daylight hours. Maintenance routines preserved effectiveness. Regular brushing removed ice and kept the wool lofty. Lanolin treatments were reapplied each autumn. Repairs were made immediately to prevent small tears from compromising insulation. Unlike modern throwaway culture, cloaks were maintained for decades through careful stewardship. Cold regions developed extreme weather variants. Lapland's Sami people created versions stuffed with down between wool layers. Scottish Highlanders made double-thickness cloaks soaked in bog iron solutions for water resistance. Alpine shepherds wore felted wool so dense it could stand upright on its own. Each culture refined the basic design for local conditions. Modern recreations prove their effectiveness. Outdoor enthusiasts report medieval-style cloaks keep them warmer than modern jackets in freezing winds. The key is proper wrapping technique, creating that complete seal against air intrusion. Historical groups find wool cloaks match or surpass high-tech gear when worn correctly, especially in wet cold. The layered dress system optimized cloak performance. Peasants wore tunics and hose underneath to create multiple air barriers. Any gaps at wrists or ankles were covered with wool wraps before donning the outer cloak. This complete encapsulation of body heat demonstrates advanced understanding of thermal systems.
Psychological benefits shouldn't be overlooked. The enveloping cloak provided a sense of security in harsh weather. Its weight had a calming effect during storms. The hood created private space during communal living, a rare luxury for peasants. These factors helped people endure long winters beyond just physical warmth. Mobility wasn't sacrificed for warmth. Strategic pleating and cut allowed full arm movement for chores. Side slits permitted walking while keeping the bulk wrapped close. Some had interior straps that converted the cloak into a makeshift backpack when working. Every feature served multiple practical needs. Production methods ensured accessibility. Almost every village had wool processors who could make basic cloaks. Wealthier peasants might trade for finer versions, but even the poor could obtain serviceable ones. The materials were renewable annually from local sheep flocks. This made them universally available survival tools. The cloak's endurance testifies to their design. Many survived years of daily use in brutal conditions. Museum pieces show repair upon repair, evidence of valued possessions. Written accounts describe cloaks passed through generations like family heirlooms. Their longevity speaks to both construction quality and irreplaceable utility. Modern science confirms medieval wisdom. Thermal imaging shows cloaks maintain consistent surface temperatures despite external changes. Material tests prove medieval wool insulates better than many modern fabrics when properly maintained. The design principles align with current understanding of heat retention, just achieved through empirical experience rather than laboratories. Survival situations still warrant their use. Search and rescue teams keep wool cloaks for emergency shelters. Arctic researchers utilize similar designs when electronics fail. The simple reliability of a wrap that works without zippers, batteries, or synthetic materials remains valuable when technology falters. The medieval winter cloak represents one of history's most successful clothing innovations.
Its effectiveness stemmed from generations of refinement addressing real survival needs. What appears as a simple garment was actually a sophisticated personal heating system, proof that medieval peasants understood thermal dynamics better than we often credit them for. Their solution required no complex technology, just intelligent use of available materials to create portable warmth that modern gear still struggles to match under certain conditions.
Medieval furniture did more than provide places to sit or store items. It served as an essential part of their heating system. Stone benches built near hearths weren't just for seating, they absorbed heat from the fire and radiated it back for hours after the flames died down. These thick stone surfaces worked like thermal batteries, warming anyone who sat on them long into the night. A single stone bench could stay warm enough to sit comfortably for up to 6 hours after the fire went out. Hollow wooden boxes placed near fireplaces served a similar purpose. Peasants filled these with hot stones or clay pots full of embers. The wood didn't conduct heat as well as stone, but the trapped warmth created comfortable seating for working or eating. Some boxes had removable tops, so stones could be reheated and replaced throughout the day. This provided steady warmth without constantly feeding a fire. Some benches connected directly to the fireplace structure itself. Masonry seats built right into the hearth absorbed heat from the firebox sides. Even when no fire burned, these would remain pleasantly warm from residual heat in the thick stonework. Many castles and wealthier homes had such benches built into their great hall fireplaces, early versions of today's heated seating.
Wooden variants had their own advantages. Craftsmen built hollow stools with small access doors. Peasants could place a heated rock inside before sitting, creating instant warm seating anywhere in the home. These portable warmers were especially valuable near cold exterior walls or drafty windows. Some designs had metal linings to protect the wood from scorching while improving heat distribution. Storage chests near fireplaces served multiple purposes. Beyond holding household items, their thick wooden walls absorbed heat throughout the day. Contents stayed warm, useful for drying damp clothing or keeping bread from freezing overnight. The warm chest surfaces also provided standing space to warm hands while working nearby. Larger chests sometimes had compartments, specifically for keeping heated stones that radiated through openings in the sides. Beds incorporated heat-storing designs too. Raised wooden platforms held thick straw mattresses that trapped warmth. Some had stone slabs beneath the straw that absorbed daytime heat. Others used wool-stuffed mattresses that retained body heat exceptionally well. The best beds stood near hearths where radiant heat could reach them directly. Early attempts at zone heating within homes. Cooking areas showed clever adaptations. Work tables near fireplaces often had stone tops that stayed warm for food preparation. Some bread ovens included stone seating around their exteriors where people could warm themselves while waiting for baking to finish. These multi-use spaces maximized every bit of available heat for both cooking and comfort. The furniture worked differently across seasons. In summer, stone benches provided cooling surfaces to sit on when shaded. The thermal mass that stored heat in winter now absorbed excess warmth from people's bodies. Some homes had removable wooden caps for stone benches that adjusted their insulating properties by season. Bare stone for summer, covered for winter warmth. Construction techniques improved over time. Early stone benches were simple slabs. Later versions had carved hollows that fit the body better while trapping warm air against the sitter. Some wooden boxes developed sophisticated venting systems that circulated warm air without allowing embers to contact flammable surfaces. These refinements show evolving understanding of heat transfer principles. The effectiveness is visible in archaeological remains. Excavated homes show wear patterns indicating preferred seating spots. Stone benches near fireplaces are often worn smooth from generations of use. Chemical analysis reveals some stones were heated repeatedly over many years. These finds confirm the furniture's importance in daily life rather than being occasional luxuries. Psychological benefits shouldn't be overlooked. The enveloping cloak provided a sense of security in harsh weather. Its weight had a calming effect during storms. The hood created private space during communal living, a rare luxury for peasants. These factors helped people endure long winters beyond just physical warmth. Mobility wasn't sacrificed for warmth. Strategic pleating and cut allowed full arm movement for chores. Side slits permitted walking while keeping the bulk wrapped close. Some had interior straps that converted the cloak into a makeshift backpack when working. Every feature served multiple practical needs. Production methods ensured accessibility. Almost every village had wool processors who could make basic cloaks. Wealthier peasants might trade for finer versions, but even the poor could obtain serviceable ones. The materials were renewable annually from local sheep flocks. This made them universally available survival tools. The cloak's endurance testifies to their design. Many survived years of daily use in brutal conditions. Museum pieces show repair upon repair, evidence of valued possessions. Written accounts describe cloaks passed through generations like family heirlooms. Their longevity speaks to both construction quality and irreplaceable utility. Modern science confirms medieval wisdom. Thermal imaging shows cloaks maintain consistent surface temperatures despite external changes. Material tests prove medieval wool insulates better than many modern fabrics when properly maintained. The design principles align with current understanding of heat retention, just achieved through empirical experience rather than laboratories. Survival situations still warrant their use. Search and rescue teams keep wool cloaks for emergency shelters. Arctic researchers utilize similar designs when electronics fail. The simple reliability of a wrap that works without zippers, batteries, or synthetic materials remains valuable when technology falters. The medieval winter cloak represents one of history's most successful clothing innovations. Its effectiveness stemmed from generations of refinement addressing real survival needs. What appears as a simple garment was actually a sophisticated personal heating system, proof that medieval peasants understood thermal dynamics better than we often credit them for. Their solution required no complex technology, just intelligent use of available materials to create portable warmth that modern gear still struggles to match under certain conditions.
The medieval winter cloak wasn't just an article of clothing. It was a carefully engineered heating system worn on your back. Peasants relied on these wool garments to create personal microclimates that could withstand freezing temperatures without modern technical fabrics. The secret wasn't in fancy materials, but in how they manipulated basic physics using simple designs. A standard cloak used about 3 yards of thick wool fabric in a semicircular cut. The shape wasn't accidental. It allowed the garment to wrap completely around the body with no gaps. When secured at the neck with a simple clasp or tie, it formed a continuous barrier against wind and cold. The loose fit created an insulating airspace that worked like a thermos for body heat. Wool's natural properties made it ideal for this purpose. The fibers contain tiny air pockets that slow heat transfer better than solid fabrics. Medieval cloaks used densely woven wool that could trap up to 80% air by volume. This gave better insulation than modern synthetic puffers of the same thickness. The wool also retained warmth when damp from snow or sweat, unlike cotton, which loses all insulating value when wet. Construction methods enhanced performance. Many cloaks had double layers at the shoulders, where wind hit hardest. Seams were reinforced with extra stitching, but left slightly open to maintain breathability. Some versions used graduated thickness, thinner wool near the neck where movement needed flexibility, thicker panels below for maximum insulation. Each design choice addressed specific thermal challenges. Wind protection was crucial in open fields and drafty homes. A properly worn cloak could reduce wind chill by up to 20 degrees Fahrenheit. The heavy wool resisted airflow better than modern windbreakers that rely on chemical coatings. Peasants knew to face the wind with their cloak wrapped tight like a shield, using the layered wool as a barrier against icy gusts. Some cloaks incorporated additional weatherproofing. Rural versions were often coated with lanolin, the natural oil from sheep's wool. This made them shed water like a wax jacket, while allowing sweat vapor to escape. In very wet regions, peasants rubbed animal fats into the fabric for extra waterproofing that lasted all winter. The treatments smelled strong, but prevented lethal chill from soaked clothing. Cold climate areas added fur linings from local animals.
Fox, rabbit, or squirrel pelts lined the interior where they trapped warmth closest to the body. Wealthier peasants might use wolf or bear fur for the thickest insulation. These linings were often removable for warmer seasons or cleaning. Some cloaks had fur-edged hoods that could be drawn tight like a tunnel to protect the face.
Medieval peasants didn't just accept harsh winds, they controlled them. Planting thick hedgerows or rows of trees around their homes wasn't casual landscaping. It was a deliberate strategy to block icy gusts that could steal warmth from poorly insulated walls. These windbreaks reduced wind chill significantly, making outdoor work bearable and preventing drafts from penetrating homes. A simple row of bushes could mean the difference between freezing and surviving winter. The placement of these barriers showed careful thought. Peasants planted them on the north and west sides where cold winds came from. The height and density mattered too. Tall, thick hedges worked best for stopping wind, while lower shrubs helped control drifting snow. Some villages coordinated planting to create communal wind protection for entire clusters of homes. This cooperation shows how seriously they took wind management. Homes were often positioned to take advantage of natural windbreaks too. Buildings tucked into hillsides or nestled among existing trees gained extra protection. Peasants would leave mature trees standing when clearing land for houses, using them as ready-made wind barriers. This selective clearing demonstrates their understanding of microclimates long before the term existed. The materials used for windbreaks were chosen carefully. Thorny plants like hawthorn served double duty, blocking wind while deterring animals and intruders. Fast-growing willow could be planted densely and harvested for basket materials later. Evergreens provided year-round protection when deciduous plants lost their leaves. Each choice balanced immediate needs with long-term benefits. Windbreaks did more than block wind. They created pockets of still air where warmth could accumulate. On sunny days, these protected areas absorbed heat from sunlight, raising temperatures several degrees above exposed spots. Peasants would place firewood piles, animal shelters, and work areas in these warmer zones to make winter tasks easier. The orientation of homes complemented windbreaks. Many peasant houses faced south to catch maximum sunlight, while the windbreaks shielded them from northern winds. This combination of solar gain and wind protection worked like a natural heating system. Some homes had shallow ditches dug along windward sides. These subtle depressions helped deflect ground-level winds before they reached walls. Villages often developed standard windbreak practices passed down through generations. Certain tree species became traditional in different regions based on what worked best locally. Planting distances from homes were carefully maintained. Too close and roots might damage foundations, too far and protection decreased. These unwritten rules reflected centuries of accumulated experience. Windbreaks required maintenance to stay effective. Peasants pruned them regularly to maintain dense growth near the ground where wind penetration mattered most. Dead plants were replaced promptly before gaps could develop. Some communities held annual windbreak repair days where everyone worked together to reinforce these vital defenses. The effectiveness is visible in old settlement patterns. Archaeological surveys show medieval villages consistently positioned relative to prevailing winds. Farmsteads often cluster on the leeward side of hills or woods. These patterns weren't accidental, but deliberate placements to exploit natural wind protection. Even field boundaries often followed lines that would channel winds away from living areas. Modern research confirms their value. Studies show a well-placed windbreak can reduce wind speed for a distance up to 20 times its height. Temperature behind a windbreak can be 5 to 10 degrees warmer than exposed areas in winter. These measurable effects demonstrate why windbreaks were so crucial to medieval survival. They modified local climate in meaningful ways. Windbreaks interacted with other heating methods. They helped keep smoke from house fires close to homes instead of being blown away, enhancing the thermal blanket effect we discussed earlier. They protected outdoor clay pot heaters from being extinguished by gusts. The entire medieval heating system worked better because windbreaks stabilized the immediate environment. Some windbreaks served multiple purposes. Fruit-bearing plants provided food, along with wind protection. Nut trees offered harvests and acted as long-term wind barriers. Medicinal herbs planted at the base of windbreaks added to household remedies. This multifunctional approach
maximized the value of every planted space around homes. Seasonal adjustments were part of the system. In summer, peasants might trim windbreaks more openly to allow cooling breezes. Before winter, they'd reinforce them with extra plantings or temporary woven fences. Some used movable barriers, hurdles or straw bales, that could be positioned as needed during particularly bad storms. The psychological impact mattered too. Windbreaks created a sense of enclosure and security during long winters. The rustling of leaves or needles provided comforting white noise that masked howling winds. This mental relief complemented the physical warmth, both crucial for surviving months of cold weather. Wealthier households took windbreaks further. Manors might have elaborate planted mazes that served as decorative wind barriers. Castle gardens used trained fruit trees as living walls that combined beauty and function. These luxury versions worked on the same principles peasant windbreaks did, just with more aesthetic consideration.
Windbreak knowledge was passed down practically. Children learned to plant and care for them through hands-on work. Different regions developed specialized techniques. Coastal areas used salt-tolerant plants. Mountainous zones favored sturdy conifers. This localized knowledge was as valuable as any material possession for winter survival. Modern permaculture has rediscovered these techniques. Today's sustainable farmers use medieval-style windbreak designs to protect crops and livestock. The principles remain identical. Use natural barriers to modify microclimates. What medieval peasants developed through necessity still works just as well now. Survival situations prove their ongoing value. During power outages, homes with good windbreaks stay warmer than exposed ones. Campers use temporary windbreaks to make tents more livable in bad weather. The basic concept transcends time because it addresses fundamental physics of heat retention. Archaeology provides evidence of their importance. Pollen analysis shows consistent plant species around medieval home sites chosen specifically for wind protection. Property boundaries often align with wind patterns rather than simple geometric divisions. These findings confirm windbreaks were intentional systems, not accidental arrangements. The scale could be impressive. Some villages planted communal windbreaks stretching hundreds of yards to protect multiple homes. Monasteries often had extensive planted barriers around their entire complexes. These large-scale projects required planning and cooperation, proof of how seriously medieval communities took wind control. Maintenance rituals were part of seasonal cycles. Spring pruning encouraged dense summer growth. Autumn preparations strengthened windbreaks before winter storms. Damaged sections were repaired immediately. A broken windbreak could mean a cold home or frozen livestock. This regular care made the difference between adequate and exceptional protection. Windbreaks complemented building designs. Thatched roofs lasted longer when windbreaks reduced drying winds. Wattle and daub walls needed less repair when shielded from constant battering. The entire home system benefited from reduced wind exposure, another example of medieval integrated thinking. Comparative studies show their impact. Reconstructed medieval homes with proper windbreaks require less firewood than exposed ones. Temperature logs demonstrate more stable indoor conditions when windbreaks are present. The data confirms what peasants knew empirically. Wind control equals heat retention. Some wind management was even more subtle. Peasants would pile brush or straw against walls during extreme cold, temporary insulation that blocked wind penetration. Garden walls were built with slight angles to deflect gusts rather than taking them head-on. Every small adjustment contributed to overall warmth.
The principles remain sound today. Modern energy audits recommend windbreaks to reduce home heating costs. Farmers still use them to protect livestock in winter. The medieval approach wasn't primitive. It was physics-based climate control, using available materials intelligently. Their solutions worked then, and still work now, when applied correctly. Windbreaks represent one of the most sustainable heating strategies. They required no fuel beyond initial planting and maintenance. They improved over time as plants grew thicker. They benefited wildlife while protecting homes. This low-tech solution outperforms many energy-intensive modern systems in terms of long-term efficiency. The real lesson is in their systematic thinking. Medieval peasants didn't just tolerate cold winds. They analyzed patterns and developed defenses. They observed which plants worked best and planted them strategically. They maintained these living tools as carefully as any other survival equipment. What looks like simple hedging was actually sophisticated environmental engineering, developed through generations of winter experience.
Medieval peasants didn't just endure winter, they outsmarted it. Their heating solutions show how simple materials used wisely can outperform complex technology. Smoke chambers, wool layers, and clay pots work together in ways we're still learning from today. These methods prove effective heating doesn't require modern gadgets. A well-placed windbreak or heat-storing bench often worked better than struggling against the cold. The peasants mastered using what they had available in clever combinations. Which technique would you try first? The portable clay heater? The layered wool clothing? Or maybe the underground shelter? Their ideas still work when modern systems fail.